Alrighty. In this exercise here, we're going to take a look at congruent triangles. Two things. First, on this side, we are going to write congruent statements that match the markings on the triangle. And then, on the back side here, we are going to be marking up the triangles so that they match what the congruent statement says. So a couple of quick things here. First of all, naming triangles. When you name a triangle, you name it according to its three vertices. So I could call this triangle JIH. I could also call it HIJ or HJI or JHI or whatever. It doesn't matter. That you could, Sammy. So as long as you name it with the three vertices, then it doesn't matter what order they're in. Next, congruent triangles. When we say that two triangles are congruent, we mean that there's some sort of a rule for translating or rotating or reflecting one triangle directly on top of the other in such a way that each of the angles has a corresponding angle that it matches up with. So if you look at this one, according to the markings here, A would correspond to I. So this would be like a slide over so that I would be right on top of A and they'd match up perfectly. They would be congruent. And here, J is marked with these three markings, these three arcs, which means it's congruent to C. So we would slide triangle HIJ over to the second triangle over here, JAC, and angle J and angle C would match up perfectly. They'd be congruent, or they are congruent. And H and J, they match up. You see they have a single arc here. That means that they're congruent. So H corresponds to J, angle J. Well, actually, I should say this is angle J. AJC, but you know, angle I corresponds to angle H, and angle IJH corresponds to angle C over here. We also have three pairs of corresponding sides. AC corresponds to IJ, and you'll see that the double markings say that they're both the same length. Oh, what's wrong, bud? Okay, where were we? Oh, yeah. And IH is congruent with AJ. You see the single tick marks shows that they're the same length. And that HJ is congruent to JC. And you'll see by the three tick marks that they're congruent. So these are the three pairs of congruent sides. Now, when you're writing a congruent statement, you're basically saying that this triangle, because all the corresponding angles are congruent with all the corresponding angles over here, and all three sides correspond to three sides over here, that they're congruent. So you want to say one triangle is congruent to the other. And the important thing is although you can name the triangle any way you want, you have to name them in the same order both times. So let's take a look here. If we call this triangle HIJ, triangle HIJ, and our congruent symbol looks like that. It's an equal sign with a little tilde on top. Then we have to go over here. We say, well, which angle corresponds to H? It's right here at J, AJC technically. So we have to start out with triangle J. Next we went to I. We look over here, what's the corresponding angle over here? It's A. And then the last we went to J, and the corresponding angle for this other triangle would be at C. All right? So we have to name them in the correct order. So although you could name them in any way you want, they have to be named in the same order. So here's another example. I could have called this triangle, I don't know, JHI. Then J over here would correspond to C. H here corresponds to vertex J, and I up here corresponds to vertex A. So either of those would be correct. What's wrong, Sammy? Oh no, that's no good. Alright, let's do another one. So over here, we've got two triangles, TRJ and JKL. Of course, I can name either of these triangles any way I want, but when I write my congruent statement, It matters what order they go in. So it doesn't matter for the first one you pick. So let's just call this, I don't know, TRJ. TRJ. There's our congruent symbol. It's like an equal sign with a tilde on top. T is marked with 3 arcs. So it corresponds to K down here, which is also marked with 3 arcs. So we're going to call this triangle K. R comes next. That's marked with 2 arcs. Look down here, L. That's marked with 2 arcs. So L comes next. And last, J is marked with a single arc. And so J is going to be the last letter here. Also notice that when you look at your congruent sides, notice RJ is marked with a single mark, and JL is also marked with a single arc, and RJ and JL are both in the last part of the name. So you can also identify congruent segments using the names as well. All right, let's take a look at the back side now. Here, we're supposed to mark them up so that the 2 triangles are congruent according to the congruent statement. So here's the part I would do. I'd start over here. Let's just go ahead and mark our 3 angles. Okay? Okay. Now notice I got vertical angles right here. So automatically, this one has to be 3. But we'd get that from the names anyway. So notice X, angle X over here, right, or vertex X, matches X in the other name. It's right there. See, next comes Y. That's up here. And Y corresponds to R, which we marked with a double. So Y will get marked with a double arc. And then we got Z over here. That's the last one. And Z corresponds to S, and we marked S with a single. So it's marked with a single. So we've marked each of the angles at the vertices with the correct number of arcs, so they all match up. And now we have to go ahead and mark the sides as well. So here's what I'll do. Between the single arc and the triple arc, I'll put a single tick mark. And then between the single and the triple over here, single tick mark. Between the single and the double, I'll put a double tick mark. And over here, between the single and the double, I'll put a double tick mark. And then between the double and the triple, I'll put a triple tick mark. And between the triple and the double over here, triple tick mark. And let's just check. YX appears in the first 2 letters of the name here, and RX appears in the first 2 letters over here. So they match up. Or RS appears as the last 2 letters in the name. Over here, and that's our double tick mark. And over here, our double tick mark is YZ, which also appears in the last 2 letters. So corresponding sides also appear in the same position in the name. Let's do one more. So next here we've got HFG and FYZ. So HFG, FYZ. So let's mark this one over here first. Let's go ahead and mark H with a single, G with a double, and F with a triple. Now, let's see. H in the name corresponds to F over here. So if that's H is a single, then F must be the single over here. G here is in the middle of the name, so it corresponds to Y in this name. So over here we mark G with a double tick mark, or double arc. So we mark Y with a double arc. And then last we've got F, which we marked with a triple arc, corresponds to Z, also at the end of the name. So we'll mark Z with a triple tick mark, or triple arc, I mean. Then let's go ahead and mark our sides. We'll mark between double and triple a single tick mark, between double and triple, single tick mark. Between double and single, we'll put 2 tick marks. Between double and single, we'll put 2 tick marks. And between single and triple, we'll put 3 tick marks. And between single and triple, we'll put 3 tick marks. Now, it doesn't really matter how I could have put 2 tick marks here and 3 tick marks up here, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just as long as corresponding sides have the same markings on them and corresponding angles have the same markings on them. And you can tell which sides and which angles correspond based on the names. So if you go to check your answers and your diagrams don't look exactly like what you see in the answer key, don't sweat it, because it just means that they chose slightly different markings. Just make sure that yours match up properly. If you have any questions, of course, you can always ask about it. Good luck.